Do not go gentle into that good night.
Well, let's say first is we will not go silently into the night. This entire night tomorrow and however long this election takes to get us the results. Here's another question. Where did all those ballots come from, Monica? It's also been reported to the state. So I hope you guys pick this up.
Is that right? Was there a bag of ballots that came from the assessor's office? Is that correct, Monica?
Oh, is this a libel suit that you
You
guys
can
are
keep going until you go
looking
through.
for?
I'm
No, we're
asking you a
asking.
question.
I will tell you point blank,
If you want
no. There was nothing. It has been shown that it was a
I
purse.
don't understand what
It
my
had
phone-
nothing to do with me. I didn't go in or out my door.
I thought that was my
And there
ticket.
is film
No,
that
you got
shows
me
this,
for
and it's a
seconds
lie.
because you're
I
interrupted.
don't know if
You should be ashamed of yourself if you supported a Democrat, because you in turn support the entire Democrat platform, and it is a disgrace to this country. One nation under God. And all of you, I'm not judging you, but God will someday.
and you're supporting a baby killer too, obviously, if she's a Democrat.
We can forgive the head honcho of the South Park Outsiders for misquoting Dylan Thomas on the evening of November 9th, 2022, one day after the general election. Whether or not she knew she was channeling the old Welsh poet's admonition not to go gentle into the good night is unsure. We assume the South Park Outsiders never go gently anywhere, nor silently. Identified as a non-member of the Christian Nationalist sect of the Park County Republican soiree on November 9th, the South Park Outsiders' head accountable's intent not to go silently into the night referred to her and her comrades' siege of the Park County Municipal Building and the grounds surrounding it to protect against the 2,000 mules they were confident would steal the election, specifically a steal from their poster boy candidate for District 3 Commissioner Dave Whistle. Who knows how many days and nights they staked out the area, spreading hair on fire alarms far and wide, probably via a telephonic network they'd likely set up or on social media, or maybe they utilized walkie-talkies or even sentries strategically posted here and there, waving signal flags and flares. And because the official vote counting and verifications were taking days to complete, the outsiders were determined to hang around to the bitter end. Indeed, in her words, we will not go silently into the night, presumably until the fat lady sang. It is instructive to note that the SPO head accountable raises the specter of Monica Jones, the county assessor, purloining ballots to change votes in favor of Dave Whistle's opponent. Commissioner Amy Mitchell is present, intently interested in what the head accountable says, jotting down notes of the high points, certainly irrefutable evidence the big lie is alive and well in little old Park County. And if we had any doubt about the devotional principles of the Christian Nationalist ethno-culture sect of the Park County Republican Party, take note that it will not be left to man, but only to God, to judge the baby-killing Democrats. But before we delve deeply into the South Park Outsiders' allegation that the assessor, Monica Jones, stole votes from Whistle on election night 2022, we must talk a bit about Dave Whistle and Amy Mitchell, the far-right Christian Nationalist majority on the Park County Board of County Commissioners. Amy Mitchell, chair of the Park County Board of Commissioners and also chair of the Christian Nationalist sect of the Park County Republican Party, claims to be a fifth-generation Coloradan who, as she says, strives to serve citizens living in a rural frontier environment, perhaps hearkening back to Dave Whistle's trademark, the Code of the West, which characterizes a fantasy time in American history that never really existed except via movies and television portrayals such as The Rifleman, Laramie, The Lone Ranger, Roy Rogers, etc. She gives the impression she is a rancher. Her background before moving to Park County around 2012 was, as she says, the business environment, specifically in the diet supplement arena. There are cows on her 160 acres, but are they hers? Was she a Tea Partier extraordinaire, claiming to have gotten El Paso County's contingent off the ground in 2009? Was she one of Tom Tancredo's strong women in 2014? Did she finagle a photo with Michelle Malkin, claiming Malkin endorsed her commissioner candidacy in 2020? And did that so-called endorsement sit so well with the South Park outsiders? After the 2020 election, did she share with her comrades the recommendation to pull that Christian Nationalist big lie bubble even tighter down on themselves, turn off mainstream news, and tune into OAN, One America News, where only the far-right agenda, conspiracies, and the big lie held sway? Was she at the forefront of the big lie, joining Ron Hanks in a lawsuit in 2021, claiming all sorts of nefariousness by Colorado's Secretary of State? Was she a constant cheerleader for Dave Whistle in his 2022 campaign for District 3 Commissioner? Did she completely misunderstand and gaslight the public procurement bid process regarding the sale of the 599 Rosalie property, which, yes, so many of her constituents on the Bailey side of the county had urged her to support? Did she welcome the dismal performance of dyed-in-the-wool election deniers before the Board of County Commissioners in April 2023, a veritable theatre of the absurd, claiming it would be a step in restoring voter integrity to Park County? If you know the answers to those questions, then you understand who Amy Mitchell is. But since Mitchell only arrived in Park County around 2012, the more interesting and perhaps more important question remains: who is Dave Whistle? While Amy Mitchell arrived in Park County around 2012 from El Paso County, where the Colorado Springs area had a population of over 700,000 souls, Whistle arrived in Fairplay over 30 years earlier. He came from Kiowa County with a population of less than 2,000 people, and his hometown of Eads boasted less than 900. He claims a year of attendance at Southern Colorado State College in Pueblo in 1974, but does not claim military service. When he arrived in Fairplay in 1979, the town's population was 420, and the entire county was less than 5,000. The insularity of Whistle's history is notable. He arrived in Park County intending to play rock and roll, but soon found a clerical job with the assessor. He soon became the deputy assessor, and in October 1980 he was appointed assessor. Why he was appointed to the position is only speculation. Still, we can surmise it was because the elected assessor had skedaddled. He would serve in that elected position for 38 years. He would also insinuate himself into water issues in the county, becoming president of a water district and chairman of a water authority. He and his wife Lillian also were active in the Park County Republican Party. So too, he and his wife Lillian set up a private company called GEGE Development Consulting in the year 2000. Is it a company that, of course, naturally specializes in property assessment and water issues? That gives you some basics about Dave Whistle. But what about his character? Who is he really? What questions arise? When Whistle had been assessor for nearly 20 years in 1998, did he finesse a reclassification of his property in Fairplay and that of his longtime buddy, Brian Woodyard, to agricultural when it wasn't? And how long had Brian Woodyard been a paid water district director, the entity over which Whistle presided? Was it a conflict of interest when, in 2006, Assessor Whistle represented his wife's company, GEGE Development Consulting, during a conditional use hearing before the Board of County Commissioners? He said he was only acting as a private citizen. He was, however, the assessor while his wife was serving as an interim commissioner, and she was at the time chair of the Park County Republican Executive Committee and the principal for GAGE Development Consulting. Was the appearance of a conflict more damning than the supposition, right or wrong, there was a conflict? Did appearances matter to Whistle? Did appearances matter when the Upper South Platte Water Conservancy District happily announced in March 2023 that its contract with GEGE Development Consulting, Lillian's company, was being renewed? Besides being the president of the Water District since 1985, Whistle had recently taken his seat as the newly elected District 3 Commissioner. In 2023, would Whistle's wife be raking in over $33,000 or more a year from a property tax-funded entity administered by her husband? How long had Whistle's wife, GEGE Development, been a contractor to the Water District? Decades, perhaps. Park County Republican Party, Park County Government, Park County Water Conservation and Augmentation. Is incestuousness alive and well in them, the hills? Yes. And should we also ask if Whistle's many decades-long presidency of the Upper South Platte Water Conservation District enabled both his longtime buddy, Brian Woodyard, and his wife Lillian to serve on the district's board, all receiving remuneration from property tax-generated funds? These are all interesting questions, but what does all this mean? Are Amy Mitchell and Dave Whistle dyed-in-the-wool, very far-right ethno-culture ideologues who are, by their very backgrounds, ripe to buy into the big lie? Maybe it's genetic. Perhaps it is unrelated to Whistle's small-town upbringing and Mitchell's long-lived immersion in far-right politics. Perhaps they were just born this way. Without a doubt, both of them see public service as a calling, albeit, though, one sees it as a means of making a living. They're interested and concerned in what they perceive to be what's best for Park County, but are they essentially good people who are concerned with the wants and needs of all Park County's citizens and taxpayers? Or, in the alternative, do they serve a constituency narrowly defined by their inherent biases? You will recall Lillian Whistle was chair of the Park County Republican Party in 2006 when she was chosen by the party's executive committee, acting as the vacancy committee, to elevate her to serve the remainder of a deceased District 3 commissioner's term. In 2008, when she was vice chair of the party, the executive committee, acting as the vacancy committee, again chose her to serve the remaining term of another District 3 commissioner when he summarily died. After this second temporary stint as commissioner, Lillian decided to run for election to the position with the blessing of the Republican Party Executive Committee. The election was only for a 2-year term. She lost the Republican primary for that race to Mark DeWallaby from Alma, who had petitioned onto the ballot. Lillian ran again in the 2010 Republican primary for the seat and was, for the second time, beaten by DeWallaby. Was Lillian fated to be a temporary, unelected Park County Commissioner only upon the death of an incumbent? Were rank-and-file Republicans disillusioned with the Executive Committee's consistent support for Lillian Whistle? After Lillian lost her bid to become an elected commissioner, it is alleged she and her husband Dave attended a Park County Republican Central Committee meeting where Dave threatened to— well, that's hearsay. It's vital to deal with verifiable facts, so we'll leave the hearsay to the imagination. Commissioner Dick Elsner became chair of the Park County Republican Executive Committee in 2009. One of the first things Elsner did was to propose a change to the bylaws to reconstitute the Vacancy Committee's voting block from the exclusive realm of the Executive Committee to the entire Central Committee. The bylaw change was approved. No longer would the party elites in the Executive Committee decide, for example, who would fill a vacated commissioner seat when the incumbent died or for any other reason. Under the bylaw change, the entire Central Committee would be involved in the ayes and nays for making that decision. Suffice it to say, the Whistles were not pleased, and the displeasure continues unabated to this very day. That displeasure was, of course, not only about the modification of bylaws. Was it also possibly because the Whistles were no longer honchoing the party apparatus? After Dick Elsner became chair of the Park County Republican Executive Committee, it wasn't long before Dave Whistle stopped attending the meetings. Even though he was automatically a member of the Central Committee of the party, simply because he was an elected official, he concluded the party was now, to quote, the Park County Maoist Society, the toilet bowl of volunteer organizations. Consequently, in 2012, Whistle sent his proxy vote to a trusted comrade to cover the remainder of the entire year. He'd begun sending his proxy in months before that. He characterized Elsner as Big Dick Chairman Mao. He called the first vice chair of the Executive Committee a wimp and a noodle with absolutely no spine, a little wuss boy who had no principles. He said, the current Mao man, Big Dick, makes me physically ill. He gives me ADDD, adult dumbshit disease. He railed about the tyranny of the majority leading helpless mushminds, apparently referring to the Park County Republican Party's Central Committee. At that time, proxies were read aloud to the entire Central Committee. Whistle's nasty proxy missives became so offensive, the decision was made to stop reading them aloud. Whistle, however, shot another salvo across the bow, concluding Large Dick is so full of shit that it is liquefied and comes out of his mouth when he speaks. That was 2012. Can we qualify Whistle's, by then, decades-long incumbency as the elected assessor with the sophomoric tantrums he reduced to writing for the entire Republican Party Central Committee to digest? 10 years later, though, Whistle's vitriol and sarcasm were no less acerbic. Asked to attend a candidate forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters in September 2022, he was astonished to hear there was a League of Women Voters in Park County, an organization he characterized as being more socialist and more extreme than Bernie Sanders. He questioned the LWV's format and rules for the forum, asking who had granted them the right to demand his participation. Yes, it was only an invite. He could have said yes or no, but chose to rail that the LWV's format and rules were a blatant prohibition of God-granted rights, including free speech. Whistle identifies a child's whistle as his trademark. He says his other trademark is the Code of the West. May we assume his third trademark is self-serving demagoguery? May we also assume we can take the kid out of Kiowa County, but we can't take Kiowa County out of the kid? We'll thank whatever God you believe in for small-town or rural values which are said to build character in a person. We'll acknowledge, too, that a person's character is enriched by growing up in a large city, an urban environment where exposure to folks who are not intrinsically like you necessarily expands your tolerance and understanding of the vast differences and similarities among us all. Serving one's country in the military is perhaps the most significant leveler of a society. It is where Americans of disparate backgrounds are axiomatically entwined, necessarily thrust together, learning, for example, that folks from wide open spaces and densely packed cities are not so different. Indeed, the light bulb pops on. The lesson learned is we're all Americans, and we are Americans essentially because of those vast differences and similarities. Dave Whistle does not claim military service, and neither does Amy Mitchell. We don't fault them for that, but if they had, would their far-right dogmaticism have been tempered by the experience? Would, for example, baby-killing Democrats rather be seen as worthy Americans whose God-given right of conscience simply differs from theirs? Finally, Part 6 of The Big Lie did not dive deeply into blue bags stuffed with stolen ballots and thousands of mules romping the countryside, something I had promised it would in Part 5. My apologies. But as you see, the background of this odyssey is more complex than that, and the history is essential to understanding the story. Part 7 is forthcoming. Stay tuned.